How can I send my Jewish children out into the world right now? Of all the hard conversations that I've engaged in over the course of this past year, this one stopped me in my tracks. It was November, and I was sitting across from terrified parents in my office. How can I send my Jewish children out into the world right now? In that and in this moment of increased anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, these loving parents were feeling a sense of existential terror. What I heard in their question was despair, fear, and just as shattering, abject hopelessness. What I told them that evening and what I want to tell you tonight is that we can send our Jewish children out into the world because the Jewish people are a resilient people. We survive, we endure, and we thrive not in spite of challenging circumstances, but also because of them. To adapt Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s teaching that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice, I really, truly believe that the arc of Jewish history is long, but it bends toward redemption. We have been here before, and our people have always endured. We survived Pharaoh, the destruction of our temples, the Inquisition, the Holocaust. We survived Amalek, Haman, the Crusades, the pogroms, Tsarist Russia, the Yom Kippur War. We will survive October 7th and its aftermath. Just last night, our people were huddled in shelters in Israel amidst a missile attack. I saw an Instagram story that showed Israelis out and about this morning buying chalot for the holiday. That doesn't make the attacks of last night any less terrifying or dangerous, but it is representative of our people's capacity to emerge from crisis and even then affirm Jewish life. In our Haggadah, which contains the seminal story of our people's redemption, we read the words of Vihisha Amda. In every single generation, people rise up to destroy us, but the Holy Blessed One saves us from their hands. In every generation, our people have faced adversity, existential threats to survival, but we survive time and again. The Haggadah declares that God is the one who saves us, but we play a role too. Understanding where we are now, however, requires us understanding where we've been. So, how have our people endured these tumultuous millennia? I deeply believe that we have survived as long as we have because of three essential behaviors. We've held fast to each other, held fast to Judaism, and we've adapted tradition. After the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem in 586 BCE, the Jews were exiled from the land of Israel, and we became a diasporic people. Diaspora technically means dispersion, and while we were dispersed away from Jerusalem, which was the previous center of Jewish life, we still remained in close-knit groups. The psalmist lamented, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat, we wept, and we remembered Zion." But implicit in his lament was the presence of community. Yashavnu gam bachinu bezachrenu. We sat, and we cried, and we remembered. He used the plural first person. From the beginning of exile, we were a we. We stuck together, creating new communities in Babylon, Egypt, Syria, and Greece, and then later in the Italian peninsula, the Rhineland, southern France, northern Africa. In these far-flung places, we created thriving communities. Our communities in these places were deeply tied to Judaism as well. There's a beautiful teaching about Jewish survival in the Talmud, as related by Rabban Gamliel. He tells of watching a boat sink and mourning his teacher, Rabbi Akiva, who had been on the boat. When Akiva later appears on dry land, Gamliel asks him how, and Akiva answers, a plank from the boat came to me. I leaned on it and reached the shore. Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt offers a striking interpretation of the story. She teaches that the word the Talmud here uses for plank, daf, is instructive. Its more common meaning is page, as in a page of Talmud. So in the metaphoric rabbinic imagination, Akiva's story teaches us that now that our collective ship, that was the temple, was no longer, it is a plank, a daf, the Talmud, the body of Jewish law, that can help save us from the waves of history. Holding on to Judaism, whether that's through study or holidays or ritual, that has kept our people connected and full of life. Now, sometimes what has been isn't always what our people need in a new situation, and that's where adaptation and innovation emerge as the third way that we've survived. Many of the most essential parts of Judaism and Jewish life came about because a crisis forced our people to create something new. Rabbi Ed Feinstein explains that Judaism has been a history of paradigm shifts. Despite our fierce loyalty to tradition, over time there have been disruptions in our history that caused us to reinterpret our values, rearticulate our narratives, reinvent our institutions, and reconfigure our sense of mission in the world. The Talmud, which created Judaism as we now know it, emerged after the Romans destroyed the Second Temple and ended sacrificial worship. The rabbis who were exiled by the Spanish Inquisition wrote the Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism, as well as codes of law that remain authoritative today. When Jewish existence in Europe became unbearable in the 17th century, Hasidism emerged, breathing new joy into Judaism. When the Enlightenment's promise of Jewish acceptance into mainstream society failed, Jewish leaders developed a modern vision of Zionism. And when anti-Semitism in Europe murdered 6 million of our people in the Holocaust, we founded the modern Jewish state. At each and every existential inflection point for thousands of years, our people have adapted and created so that we could survive. Rabbi Feinstein points out, the irony is all the great books of tradition were not written in moments of tradition. In times of tradition and continuity, you don't have to write a book. You write a book because you're going through a paradigm shift and you have to articulate what's about to come. We happen to be very good at this, at meeting paradigm shifts with creativity. Clinging to each other, clinging to tradition, and constantly adapting, these are the ways that our people have survived some of our most trying times. And shock of shocks, I have seen firsthand how we, both at BJBE and more broadly, have done all three of these things in the past year. In the past year, we have clung to each other, gaining strength through the power of community. From intimate vigils in our chapel to solidarity rallies in Chicago and DC to mission trips to Israel, we have shown up for each other. When some Jewish students on college campuses were struggling in the face of anti-Israel protests, we collected 54 gift cards in less than a week for me to bring to Northwestern to remind them that they weren't alone. Of the 83% of Jews who were only somewhat or not very or not at all engaged prior to October 7th, 40% are now showing up in larger numbers in Jewish life. We are looking for ways to be together and to support each other. Over the past year, we have clung to tradition. At every challenging news cycle, our community has sought solace in prayer. Our sanctuary and our Siddur could hold the heaviness of our hearts. Achenu, a 12th century prayer calling for the release of captives, became an anthem of sorts as Jews across the world prayed for hostages to be released from Gaza. Tisha B'Av, a holy day that commemorates ancient destructions, had new resonance as we navigated contemporary tragedies. and I can't tell you how many people joined our Introduction to Judaism class or decided to have Jewish baby namings for their kids because of all that's going on in the world. Having pride in being Jewish and taking Judaism seriously is one of the most powerful ways to affirm the goodness of Judaism. Now, as for adaptation, I admit that that's still happening in real time. There's so much poetry, music, art, and writing that has emerged in response to October 7th. And as these years unfold, there's more for us to create. Rabbi Elchanan Nir, an Israeli poet, wrote the following piece in Haaretz this past December. He wrote, "Now, like air to breathe, we need a new Torah. We need a new Mishnah, a new Gemara, a new Kabbalah, a new mystical ascents. And in all the brokenness and salt and ruin, now a new Hasidism and new Zionism. For we have all been flooded by the rivers of Re'im and Be'eri, and we have in us no mountain, and there are no more tablets, and we have no Moses, and we have no strength, and into our hands everything now has been given." In this excerpt, Nir is acknowledging that in this post-October 7th reality, our people need new sources to support, inspire, and push us. And it's on us to help ensure that this new Torah, whatever it will become, is written. Like our spiritual ancestors who created the Talmud, the Zohar, and the state of Israel, it's on us to remain connected and hopeful, to continue showing up for Jewish life so that it has the oxygen and energy to grow and change to meet this moment. We do not yet know how this chapter of our history will unfold. But what we do know, what I know, is that we will survive it. Yes, it is a challenging time, and I don't want to trivialize the real feelings of despair and loneliness and hopelessness that Jews are feeling. But times have also been worse. I just listed a lot of those times. During a lecture about anti-Semitism and resilience that Rabbi David Wolpe gave this past March, he shared the following anecdote. He said, "What gives me hope is I imagine a conversation with my great-great-great-great-grandfather. And I say to him, 'You know, we're having a tough time at Harvard.' And he goes, 'There are Jews at Harvard?' And I say to him, 'Yeah, but there's a lot of hatred of Israel.' And he goes, 'There's an Israel?' The arc of Jewish history is long, but it is trending toward redemption. The problems of our ancestors can help us recognize our blessings today, and they can teach us about how to face our own problems too. We are the people of the book, a people with a history, and a people with a future." Last fall, a parent of one of our 4-year-old learners in the Chava Center was explaining to her child why her friend's Israeli father had returned to Israel after October 7th for his army posting. The mom explained to her child that their friend's dad was in Israel fighting to protect the Jewish people. "Like Judah Maccabee?" the child asked. "Actually, yes, like Judah Maccabee," the mother answered. "And he's fighting against Haman?" "Well, I guess kind of," the mom answered. With these stories as anchoring frameworks, somehow this child wasn't as scared. Now, while our little learner may have conflated Hanukkah and Purim, the mix-up is actually a really beautiful demonstration of how essential survival is to our people's narrative. Internalizing these stories of resilience is how we learn to be Jews. So, how can we send our Jewish children out into the world right now? How can we feel safe raising proud Jews and being proud Jews ourselves? By knowing our history, believing deeply in the resiliency of our people, and actively contributing to the process of survival and adaptation. every time we show up for each other, for services, for a class, for a Tikkun Olam project, for a conversation, a holiday meal, we are giving life to our people. As we mark this new year of 5785, I urge us to celebrate and draw strength from all the ways we've survived 5784, and to hold on to the knowledge that resilience is not only part of our people's past, but essential to our future as well. 20th century Zionist philosopher Rav Kook wrote a poem in which he reminded humanity of our inner strength. Aleh lemala aleh, rise up, he exhorted. Ki koach az lecha, yesh lecha kanfei ruach. Because you have strength within you, you have wings of spirit. Ki koach az lanu, yesh lanu kanfei ruach. Because we have strength within us, and we have wings of spirit. Buoyed by these wings, we can be sure that Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel, will live. Shana Tova.
Invite us to turn back.